I'm still not sure.
Well, that does happen with culture too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it probably, but really these words that I don't know how many vocabulary, because I'm not a Googler, right? So I wouldn't know. But at West Point, they have this entire glossary.
Really?
And there are all these words that you wouldn't know unless you go to West Point. So a plebe, right? A plebe is like, a plebe and a firstie and a yearling. And it's like, what are those? And booyah. So at West Point, they exclaim booyah, which doesn't have an easy translation, but like you say it when somebody does something really good. It's like booyah. And then, the whole crowd of cadets that you're in will like erupt in these words that you've never heard in the English language. And that's very important because that's what it means to be a West Pointer. Every company has a culture, and when that culture is really strong, people identify with it in a noun form. They speak the language. They often wear the colors. They follow the rituals. It becomes part of your identity. And when I heard about Googlers, I thought immediately of all these other very strong cultures that are very, I'm not saying intentional in that like one person's writing the handbook, but it really is part of it is part of what makes the company great.
Now, is there a connection between that kind of cultural identity and grit, and non-IQ correlates with success?
I absolutely think so. So, you can identify with an organization or a culture that itself is gritty. I'll give you a national example, right? Country of Finland has actually fewer citizens than New York City has inhabitants. It's small. It's cold. What is there to know about Finland that could be of interest to us? There's a word in Finnish called sisu, which very roughly translates to grit, but quite literally translates to your insides, to your guts. And if you're Finnish, you have the identity of someone who, when things are really hard and you've given all you can and you still are falling short, you reach down inside and you use your sisu and you do it anyway. Now, it's anatomically impossible that the Finns are walking around with this like extra battery pack in them. And if they did have that, why don't like the Swedes have that, right? Because it's like not that far, and it's Scandinavia.
They
and
invaded Finland, I think, but
yeah, they had this little bit of rivalry there, going back. But I think what's important to learn there is that you have an identity as a Finnish person, and Finnish people do things that are hard, and we have sisu, and we prevail. And I think that when you are part of an organization like West Point, or on a team like the Seahawks or the Celtics, they're another very gritty team with another very gritty leader, or you work at a company like Google, that identity is very much part of why you often struggle through when in a different context with a different cultural identity you might not.
Now, expanding it to national identities and national cultures is fascinating in itself. Are there particular cultures or immigrant groups that are grittier than others, or?
I'm sure there are, right? There are lots of countries and cultures in the world.
I'm not trying to race bait you, by the way.
No. Well, I haven't looked at the question directly, but let me tell you why, right? First, let me just acknowledge, anybody who wants to say that, like, all cultures are the same, that's naive. I don't have any impulse to say that. But it's really hard to ask the question, are the Americans grittier than the French, and are the French, less gritty than the Japanese? And here's why. When I give my grit scale to you, you're going to answer it as you would with your comparison group. When I give it in Japan, they're going to answer it with those cultural standards, not only of their company and their family and their neighborhood, but the whole country. I want to tell you about a study that was done of over 60 countries where they asked people to fill out personality questionnaires. They didn't give the grit scale, but they gave a scale of conscientiousness, right? Related, it's in the family, right? Dependability, orderliness, I'm punctual, etc. So now you have data on dozens of countries around the world, and you can ask the question, which countries are the most conscientious and which ones are the least? Well, I'll tell you what the findings are. The 3 least gritty areas in the world were Japan, this conscientiousness, by the data, right? Japan, Korea, and China. Really? Really? They're messy people. They're not dependable. They don't work hard. Really?
Yeah.
So the researchers in that study concluded that perhaps these data were being influenced by the very high standard that exists in those countries. Right. That's why it's so hard to make these comparisons, because 2 things go into your score: what you really are, and then the frame of reference, the standard to which you're holding yourself.
Yeah, we should probably try to open up to questions in the room and on the dory. I think it's given time. We have about 15-20 minutes left.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.